Welcome, everybody, to our weekly live stream coming to you from our theater in Nashville, Tennessee, technically Hendersonville, just outside of Nashville, where we'll be doing our show this week that you do not want to miss. We'll tell you why in a little while. Pam Case, senior producer for The Huckabee Show, with me, as she always is, on our Friday live streams. We are very happy to have you join us, and we hope that you will do something. Send some questions in the chat. Send a super chat. You even get more visibility for those. We have some moderators watching to see your questions, and we'll get them to us throughout the course of our time together. But this is important. Subscribe to the channel. Don't just say, oh, I might catch you one of these days. Well, you'll never miss us if you subscribe and hit the notification bell. We always love your comments. And of course, be sure to give us a like and a share. Words that we'd never heard of before social media. Well, I guess when we were in the third grade. Do you like me? Do you like me okay? Do I like you? Now we're doing it in social media. It's really bizarre. We've got a lot of topics we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, the big news of the day, the Roe v. Wade decision coming down from the Supreme Court. We'll be talking about Jerome Powell's comments on inflation and an inspiring speech, amazing, by Kamala Harris, Vice President. And she shows off her basketball chops, and boy, I think she's ready for the women's NBA. Now, every week, we always try to cull from all of the different comments that we get during our time together, a favorite comment of the week. Our staff looks them all over and says, this is the one. Well, this is the one. It's from, I guess the proper name is Femke. That's what it looks like, Femke. Hope I'm not messing your name up, and I apologize if I am. Here's the quote. I love it. Anytime Biden says he's working on a problem, I get really worried because I know it's gonna get worse. Great comment.
That's a great one.
Now, the question we have for you this week, we'd love to get your response. You can start sending it in right away. Would this Supreme Court decision have happened had Hillary Clinton been elected president? We'll set up a poll for you. We'll leave your answers in the chat and in the comment section below. Well, we're going to get right to it today. We have some pretty amazing things. This was the scene around the Supreme Court today. You'll see both the pro-life community who was celebrating, and you'll see the pro-abortionists who were anything but celebrating today.
And resistance across this country. Thousands, tens of thousands and millions rising up now because the future of women and girls, our granddaughters and generations to come.
There you are. Some people happy, some people not so happy. But it's interesting. Within a few minutes, you had police in riot gear headed toward the Supreme Court. And I tweeted a little earlier today, why are they doing that? I mean, I think the people on the far left, the pro-abortionists, aren't they the peaceful, tolerant, loving, kind, gracious, respectful people who believe in law and order? And they're the ones who would never do anything untoward. So who's going to riot? I mean, the pro-lifers aren't going to riot. All the pro-lifers, folks like me, we're pretty happy about this court decision. So we're not going to take to the streets. We've not ever said we would. But the pro-abortion people, and particularly this group called Jane's Revenge, which is insane, have said they're going to take it to the streets. We're going to hear some other people who say the same crazy thing. Now, I want to go to Joe Biden. Joe Biden has given a speech just, an hour or so ago, and he makes some statements that, frankly, are head-scratchers. Here was the first one when he talks about the constitutional right to an abortion.
Today, the Supreme Court of the United States expressly took away a constitutional right from the American people that it had already recognized. They didn't limit it, they simply took it away. That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans. But they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country.
Now, I don't know if Joe just doesn't know what the Supreme Court actually did, or he doesn't care, because he just reads what's put in front of him. But folks, on two fronts, this was a blatant lie. Number one, there was never a constitutional right to an abortion. In fact, if Joe would read the majority opinion from the Supreme Court, Sam Alito brilliantly laid out that was the very problem of Roe v. Wade, that there was nothing in the Constitution about abortion, and therefore, in 1973, this decision was wrongly handled. It was done as a political decision, not a judicial one. The whole point of the overturning of Roe v. Wade today was because the Constitution never even implies, much less explicitly says, that a person has a right to an abortion. For the first 188 years of this country, abortion was the domain of the states, because the 10th Amendment says that if it's not expressly in the Constitution, it is the domain of the states. That's where it was. But there were states that weren't as friendly toward abortion, so they go to the Supreme Court, just like they did with same-sex marriage and other things. But in this particular instance, 49 years ago, the Supreme Court created a right that is not in the Constitution and said, oh, you have a right to an abortion based on, let's see, what can we come up with? It's not there, so we're going to have to make something up. And they did. They made up privacy. And that was the basis upon which that whole decision was made. And the justices who made it later said that, you know, it was pretty shaky. Interestingly, she wasn't on the court then, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is the heroine of the left, she herself said that this was at best a little bit on the suspect side legally. She was a strong abortion advocate. She believed that abortion should be legal, but she thought that the decision of Roe v. Wade from 1973 was very poorly constructed from a legal standpoint. So Joe Biden, when he says, first of all, that there was a constitutional right, there wasn't. And then he said it was taken away. No, it wasn't. It was simply given back to the states. Let me tell you something. In some states, there will actually be more abortions. New York and California. They'll probably have abortions, and now we'll have an entire industry where you can fly in and get your abortion. You wait for the advertising. Come to California, have your abortion. Other states like mine, Arkansas, abortion ended at 2 o'clock this afternoon. There was a trigger law in place. We had a constitutional amendment that I worked hard for in the 1980s to get in the Constitution. And then the statutory language was later put in that would guarantee that the moment the Supreme Court came down, abortion's over. So I think there's about 21 states that abortion ended with the Supreme Court decision. But there are a lot of states where there is no restriction, not even up to the moment of birth. So Joe was wrong. Either he was wrong and just doesn't know better, but he's the president, for gosh sake. He should know this. He was in the Senate for 50 years. He should know this. So I have to assume he either lied intentionally or the man is so completely out of touch with reality that he doesn't know. And if that's the case, that's worse than him lying. I'm used to politicians, even presidents, lying to me. What I'm not used to is one whose cognitive ability is so very, very destroyed that he can't make a cognitive decision or speech unless it is written down for him. Now, he made another comment in this speech today. Again, utterly untrue. It's about America being out there kind of alone, an outlier nation. Watch.
With this decision, the conservative majority of the Supreme Court shows how extreme it is, how far removed they are from the majority of this country. They've made the United States an outlier among developed nations in the world.
That's not true. First of all, it said how extreme we are in regards to the rest of the country. Joe must not be looking at the polls that are pretty consistent. A majority of Americans, almost 60%, favor some restriction on abortion. Even people who believe abortion should be legal, most of them believe it shouldn't be unrestricted, that you can go and have an abortion 5 minutes before the baby's head comes out of the womb. So Joe, when he says that this is an extreme position, he's full of it. Then he makes a statement that is, I don't expect anything out of the so-called fact-checker world. By the way, if you ever see that word, know one thing. What you're about to hear is probably as Larry Gatlin, my good friend, says, bovine droppings. That's the way he would put it. Fact checkers are partisan hacks for the most part. But he said that we were an outlier nation. That is not true. I don't know if you realize this, but every European developed nation is far more restrictive about abortion than the United States. Did you know that we are more liberal on abortion than France? Let that sink in for a minute. There basically is no developed, intelligent nation that has given abortion such almost unrestricted freedom as we have. So when Joe Biden says that we are an outlier in our, quote, extremism by making people, have to go under the law to get an abortion, that's just not true. But I kind of understand where all of this is coming from, because just yesterday, when the Supreme Court handed down their decision basically telling New York that their restrictions on self-protection and the Second Amendment were wrong, Joe had another moment at which he had to tell everybody how wrong the court was, that somehow, even though he and all the members of the House and Senate and the Supreme Court, they're surrounded by people with guns to protect them, that you're not supposed to be able to protect yourself if you go out in public. And the Supreme Court basically said, yeah, you can't have second-class amendments, and that includes the Second Amendment. So I want you to see first Joe's comment, and then I'm going to point out something that we all saw.
I am disappointed in the Supreme Court gun decision. There is one little bit of solace in the minority making up the majority opinion has laid out that it affects not every state. It affects only 40 states, a lot of states it affects. And the phrase that I found noticeable was, there's a difference between states that say may and say shall. If you have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Joe, for that very enlightening idea. But here's what he didn't think would happen, but it did, because, there are some reporters who actually pay attention when they're in the room with the president. And here's what they notice. I want you to take a look. This is the note card that his staff had given him. We're going to blow it up where you can see it. And it tells him, you enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to the participants. You take your seat. The press enters. You give brief comments, 2 minutes. Then you ask Liz Shuler, president of the AFL-CIO, a question. It is scripted down to when he walks in the room, when he sits down, he has to say hello. Here's the crazy part. He has to be told when to say hello. The whole thing, I thought it was a joke when I first saw it. I thought, oh, this is funny. This is from the Babylon Bee. They're making fun of how he has to be scripted down to telling him when to walk in and walk out. Then we realized, no, this was his actual notes. So we had a little fun. We decided that what was on the back side of that card, because, the call of nature affects us all, and his staff probably gave him this on the other side. When going to the bathroom, you open the stall door. You sit down. You do not eat the paper. Just because we don't know. You got to laugh to keep from crying.
That's exactly right, and that's the only reason we took a little extra punch this week.
Yes, we did. Okay, I bet we're getting some questions and comments.
We absolutely are, and we've got to take this opportunity to thank the folks that are joining us, especially for the first time. So you've got to smash that like button for us. Would you do that? And also, while you're at it, share this and let others know that you're watching today. We want you to be able to participate. And yes, Gov, we've got some great questions already in line. Larry Massey writes today, this overthrow is the answer to prayer to millions of believers worldwide. Now, the real work begins as we fight abortion in every state.
That's exactly right. There's something that I have long advocated would be an ultimate solution. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy about today's ruling because for 21 states it's over. The other states will at least have to let their people, through their elected representatives, weigh in on it, and I think that's a plus, and some states may end up with more restrictions, who knows. But the ultimate answer, personhood. When we recognize that an unborn child is a person, by the way, that's affirmed by the biology. So when the left always says, follow the science, we got to follow the science. I couldn't agree more. I'm all about following the science, and the science would tell us that at conception, a human life is created with a different DNA makeup than either the mother or the father. That's why when a person says, well, a woman has a right to do with her own body what she wants. Maybe she does. If she wants to get a tattoo, if she wants to get piercings, if she wants to remove a kidney or her tonsils, that's her business. But the baby is not a part of her body. The baby is living in her body. You say, well, that's a rather bold statement. It's a biological fact. The child may not even share the blood type. Most certainly does not have the identical DNA of the mother or the father because it has its own. Therefore, conception is when life begins. What happens if we recognize that the unborn child is a person? Well, the 5th and 14th Amendments would protect the life of that baby more than the courts ever could, because it would simply say, you can't deprive a person of their rights of life without due process and without equal protection under the law. Those are the two factors that wouldn't be present in an abortion. There is no due process. There's no equal right when you kill the child. So this is great, step 1. Step 2, recognizing personhood. That will be wonderful.
Nuts for all, writes us today, Governor. Common sense, sadly, is not so common. Don't the pro-abortionists realize, and you touched on this earlier, that they can have their abortions still?
It's for them a political move. Let's never forget this. They're going to make as much as they can out of it this fall and try to say we got to keep the Democrats in power because a woman's right to choose is on the line. I've always wondered, how come there's only one choice that you're willing, or that the left is willing for women to make? You know, they always talk a right to choose. What about the women who choose to give birth? The women who choose to give birth and then put their child for adoption? Those are choices that are unacceptable to the far left. The only choice that they support is the choice to take the life of the child. And so, to me, that's nonsense. And I hate when they say words like reproductive health, or this is about health care for women. No, it isn't. In every abortion, somebody dies. Every abortion, someone dies. It's the only medical procedure I know that is guaranteed that a human being is going to die from the application of it. And it's possible that the birth mother may die as well. But the baby always dies in an abortion. You know what else really is never talked about? The disproportionate numbers of abortions that are performed on minority women. Unbelievable. But most abortions are performed on African American women. Now, I would say most, disproportionate to the population by more than double. Where are Planned Parenthood clinics mostly placed? Poor, black neighborhoods and near colleges and universities. But they specifically target minorities. Might be because their founder, Margaret Sanger, was a racist. Again, most people don't know. She was a strong believer in eugenics, which believed that black people shouldn't reproduce because she believed they were inferior. If I were an African American, I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs that Planned Parenthood is founded on racism and that it targets black women, which means it targets black babies, and it is disproportionately killing an entire race of people and would if it could. It's just disgusting.
Thank you, Gov. Reminding to everybody, too, the question of the week: would this Supreme Court decision today have happened had Hillary been elected president? So just wanted to throw that back out there so that our audience can participate today, okay? Don Blanchard writes, Governor, so how did the Roe v. Wade ruling get suspiciously pushed up to the front of the ruling line in such a way that it could have landed on top of the midterm? Or was that just another irregularity?
I don't read anything into it. It was going to happen in June because that's when the court decisions come out from the previous court term. So it could have been 2 weeks ago, could have been last week, could have been yesterday, but it came out today. And honestly, I think a lot of the reason they held it to near the end because they didn't want the other decisions they were going to make to be completely overshadowed. And quite frankly, I think they recognized this one would be the most explosive, perhaps the one that would create chaos in the streets, and they wanted to lay it out there in the latter part rather than turn the court into a basically fight zone for the next several days and then come out with other decisions. So I don't think I'd read much into it. The timing, it was going to be in June, so that's not really that unusual. Do the Democrats hope they can make it an election issue? Of course they do. You know why? What else they got? They can't say we're doing a great job with the economy. Think. They can't say the border's really better now that we're in charge. Boy, aren't you loving what you're paying for gasoline? Gee, aren't groceries cheaper and easier to get? They got nothing. This is all they got. And I don't think it's going to work for them, because I don't think they understand that the passion of those of us who are pro-life are equal to the passion of those who are pro-abortion.
Okay, over 1,000 votes in, Governor, by the way. What Supreme Court decision would have happened had Hillary been elected president? No, 85%.
Yeah.
Yes, 14%.
Yeah, I guarantee you Hillary would not have put constitutional originalist on the court, and there would have been a more political decision, not the one that was made, which was not, if you read the argument, and I would say this, before you have a strong opinion, read what Alito wrote and what was concurred by the other justices. I want to take a look at, this is when Joe Biden trying to defend the gas prices. They're not his fault, of course. They're all a part of Putin, but he's also got a new addendum to that. It's also the Republicans' fault.
So for all those Republicans in Congress criticizing me today for high gas prices in America, are you now saying we were wrong to support Ukraine? Are you saying we were wrong to stand up to Putin? Are you saying that we would rather have lower gas prices in America and Putin's iron fist in Europe? I don't believe that.
I hope he's not seriously trying to suggest that high gas prices are the result of the Republicans not supporting Ukraine more, because as I recall in the early days of the Ukraine war, it was Joe Biden who didn't want to give them really any assistance at all. And besides, what does that have to do with the price of gasoline in America? Joe, little clue here. You can fix this by, instead of going to Saudi Arabia and begging them for oil, why don't you go to Midland, Texas, and ask them to pump it out from under our own feet? But tell them that you're not going to continue to demonize them and talk about how evil they are and then expect them to bail you out. It doesn't work like that. By the way, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done that. We need you to become part of our subscription, and that way we'll keep you posted when we'll be doing these. Hit the notification bell. Be sure to leave us a comment. We like those. And speaking of like, hit the like button as well and share it with your friends and your family. Well, Joe Biden's been talking about gas prices, but so has every other American. Has been putting gas in their tank because they're shocked at what it's costing them. But at the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, was asked, would the president be meeting with oil executives? Because he was meeting with people who were there to talk about wind and solar.
The president isn't really doing everything he can to bring gas prices down, is he?
I feel like there's is there something else to the question?
Oh, there's a lot to the question.
Oh, okay. Well,
for example,
yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, he's meeting today with people installing offshore wind equipment, but not oil and gas CEOs who are rarely ever in town, but they are today. So how did that help lower gas prices?
Well, the president has done a, so let me step back for a second.
But no.
Yeah, just keep stepping back. Step back until you're out of the room, because, honey, I hate to tell you this, you are in over your head by a long shot. Steve Ducey was, or rather Peter Ducey was the one asking that question. And he throws another one at her about electric cars, because Joe Biden keeps saying he's doing everything he can. And the White House is saying he's doing everything he can. But his big thing is, go buy an electric car. It's like saying to a homeless person, you're homeless? Go buy a house. I mean, that's the most insensitive thing imaginable. So this is the question that Peter Ducey poses.
The president yesterday was talking about this transition to greener energy someday. A lot of people can't afford a $60,000 electric car, and they also are having a hard time affording gas right now. That sounds like a painful transition. So how much of that kind of pain is the president okay with?
No, that transition, we are in a transition to clean energy.
You know what we need to be in transition to? A transition to a totally different government other than these goons. a different president, a different House, and a different Senate. That's the transition that America desperately needs. And I hope we will make the first big step toward that in November.
All right, a big thank you to Alexandria. Super chat coming at us this afternoon. Governor, the only time abortion should be allowed is if there is something wrong with the fetus and threatens mom's life as well, as many people can't have kids and want to adopt a newborn.
You know, there's this talk that the federal government and a lot of corporations are going to be giving money so people can travel to get abortions. Just before we went on, I mean, literally 30 seconds before we went on, we found out that Disney has announced, that they will pay for their employees to travel to get an abortion. Look, Disney has, I mean, they're gone.
They've lost.
They're gone. They're no longer a family-friendly company. It is not trustworthy to think that a Disney product, a Disney movie, or a Disney theme park is a safe place for a small child. But here's what I'd love to ask Disney and all these other companies that announced this today. We'll fly you somewhere to get an abortion. Will you also help provide for the cost for them to keep their baby? Is that something you're also going to help them do? Will you help provide the legal cost if some folks of your employ would like to adopt a child? And if not, please explain to the people who work for you, who love kids, and don't want to kill them, but would like to adopt one or care for one, how come that isn't equally important? We can't let this day go by without a little look at the vice president, because she may be, you know, who knows? She's a heartbeat away from the presidency, a heartbeat away. You know, we give Joe a hard time about his speeches and how he just bungles it up. Thank goodness, Kamala Harris, vice president. We sure can understand clearly what she has to say. Watch.
It is the responsibility as a chief legal officer, which each of them has a responsibility of being, to concern themselves with making sure that the laws that are passed in their state do comport with the constitutions of their state and with the United States Constitution, and to ensure that enforcement is conducted in a way that is fair and equal in terms of the treatment of the laws and the enforcement of the laws in their state.
Pam, do you have any idea what she just said?
What was that?
What was that indeed?
What
I mean,
in the world?
I've listened to that now several times, and it's like she's reading from a script, but it's on a circle, and it's just some words, and she just goes around and talks responsibility, and it's really.
It's more like Charlie Brown's teacher to me. Wonk, wonk,
Wonk, wonk, wonk, wonk, wonk.
But anyway, all right.
Wait, we got to. I'm going to cut her some slack. This is going to surprise you, because I usually kind of work her over, and I just did. This is an appearance she made. She was with a girls' basketball team, and I'm going to defend her, and I'm not being sarcastic. I was before. I'm not now. I'll show you the clip, and then I'll tell you why I'm not going to really beat up on her for this moment. Watch. Well, that first shot, nothing but net.
For sure.
Yeah, here's why I'm going to be very kind to her on that. That was very poor staff work on the part of her staff, putting her in a situation where she inevitably was going to look bad.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation before where you're thrust into something. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody said she's a capable basketball player. So, yeah. Look, I get it. It's cute. Let her do it. But if she misses, fine. Don't make a big deal out of it. First of all, she's in a dress pantsuit, so it's not like she's in gym clothes. Probably in
heels.
Yes. And maybe hadn't touched a basketball, if ever, but maybe not in 40 years.
Right. And
then the stress and pressure of putting her out there with all these cameras rolling. I just cut her slack on that one.
Absolutely.
I'll say, look, her speech, she owns that. But the basketball deal, I'm just going to say that was cute. It was funny.
Yeah.
But she ought to fire somebody.
Yeah, well, nightmares are made of being asked to throw the first pitch at a baseball game in front of the entire, I've had nightmares about that.
I was asked to do that, and I did it one time. I've rehearsed and
How'd you do?
rehearsed and rehearsed. I got it over the plate. I'll never do it again because the stress of that, first of all, it is a national pastime in America.
Right.
That even if you are a beloved political figure, which I haven't always been, but even if you are, if you're announced at a sporting event, you are instantly booed. It is just, it's the American way.
It is.
You can have a 90% approval rating. You get announced at any sporting event and they're going to boo because it's like, shut up, we didn't come here to see you. I get that. So I would always say, do not announce my presence, ever. Because when they did, I'd get booed. Worst experience, I'll take a moment here. Never, ever go to Baton Rouge, where LSU plays football. They call their stadium Death Valley for a reason. It's not because you may die on the field. It's that if you're a fan for the other team up in the stands, that's where the death may occur. And I had told him, I was governor at the time, athletic director at University of Arkansas was Frank Broyles, and we had gone to see the game. And I told the LSU officials, because they had, escort and all this stuff, and took us to our seats. And I said, do not announce my presence. Oh, no, we won't. And, I said, I really don't want you. We'd love to acknowledge. No, do not. Well, third quarter. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy today to have with us in section 302 or whatever it was, the governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee. Well, it wasn't just they booed. They started throwing things. Bottles. I mean, it was brutal. It was absolutely crazy. And it took like my 2 Arkansas troopers and about 7 Louisiana troopers to get me out of that place alive. So
Just another day at LSU.
that's a normal day at LSU. Those folks love football, and let's say it this way, they love to get lubricated before, during, and after the game. Wow, never again. Okay, more questions.
All right, let's see what we've got here. Cindy McCaughey says, how do we stop the court packing moves that are surely next on the agenda?
Attacking.
Court packing.
Oh, court
moves.
packing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea of court packing means that they would expand the number of justices from 9 to, let's say, 15. That's been the number they've proposed, believing that if they expanded to 15, that the next 6 they appoint would be liberals, and therefore they would get the opinions to go their way. The very idea of that tells you what they believe the court is all about. It's about rendering to them legislative actions that they can't get the legislature to do. Let me repeat that. It's to get the judicial branch to do legislative work that they can't get the legislature to do. Because the legislature knows if they enacted some of these things, they'd pay the price at the ballot box and members wouldn't vote for it because their constituents don't want it. So they quietly pretend that they are fine with it. They let the court do it, and then they hide behind and say, hey, the court did it. Well, I didn't vote on that, but the court did it, and that's the law of the land. And folks, that's the problem. And that's why I'm so proud of some of these justices like Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, Amy Coney Barrett, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. I'm not proud of Roberts, he's a coward. But the others I'm proud of because they actually say, look, we're going to do what we think is the law, what it says, not what we want it to say, not what we wished it said. We're going to judge based on what the text actually says. I want to close on this reminder. This decision would not have happened had Donald Trump not been president. Not doing a campaign speech here for Trump, I'm just telling you. For those of you that didn't vote for him because you didn't like his mean tweets, dry your tears and thank God he was the one who appointed the last 3 Supreme Court justices, because that decision that went 6-3, maybe 5-4, depending on how you look at Roberts' view, would have gone 9-2 the other way. The other way. And one of the people that would have been on that court, except for Mitch McConnell, whatever you think of Mitch McConnell, thank God for him today, because he kept Merrick Garland from being on that court, which would have been a disaster. Hey, be sure to leave your questions in the comments section. We'll still be reading them even after we go off the air. And of course, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We always are wanting to let you know when we'll be back on for a live stream so you can join us. We thank you very much for joining us, and we hope everybody will watch the show tomorrow night. We've got Matt Walsh coming on.
Absolutely. Sean Davis
from the Federalist.
From Federalist is going to be joining us.
Rebecca St. James will be doing music.
Wrapping up with a great music from Rebecca. It's going to be a fabulous show.
It is. We're going to have some laughs. It's going to be a great show.
I call it enlightening, too.
Very
enlightening.
Very much enlightening. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon. Don't forget to watch Huckabee this weekend right here on TBN.